This video is about a do-it-yourself, far more powerful burner for the coffee can mini Foundry project. Shown here, standing up, is the completed burner that I showed working in the intro video, and in this video we're going to see how to make one. We're going to need some tools for this project. To tighten threaded fittings, we'll need some kind of adjustable wrench and pliers or 2 pairs of pliers. We need a torch to do some soldering. We need an electric drill of some sort to do some drilling. We need solder flux and solder to do the soldering. And then we need some drill bits that I will take a closer look at here. The big drill bit shown here is an 11/32. It's going to be used to drill the 4 air inlet holes into the burner. The next special thing we need is some of these little drill bits that you can get at a specialty tool store. This is a little drill index. I think you can see it on camera here. It has number drills in it from number 61 to number 80. These are extremely tiny, fine drill bits. The reason we need them is we have to drill a gas orifice, which is a very tiny hole that's under 1/16 inch in size, so we need a set of these special bits. They aren't terribly expensive, fortunately, just a few dollars. And then to use the special bits in a drill, we need this collet chuck adapter, which I think was less than $5. This allows the tiny bit to be gripped in the collet chuck here, and then the other end just goes into our electric drill so we can drill the gas orifice when we get to that point of the video. We also need some parts to make our high-powered air-assisted burner from. This valve here is from an old propane torch. The orifice plug has been removed, so this is simply going to serve as a tank adapter and valve for us. We have a piece of 1/2-inch steel pipe, about 6.5 inches long. We have a piece of 5/32 brass tubing from the model store. It's about 6 inches long, and I've put an L-shaped bend in the end. Then we have a piece of copper tubing, and on it I have the compression fitting, nut and washer, and then here we have a 1/2-inch pipe thread to faucet thread adapter from the plumbing aisle at your local home improvement store. Next thing we need is a nipple of 1/2-inch copper pipe. This one's been used before. It's got some solder on it, so it'll be very easy to solder it into the threaded fitting where it needs to go. The last piece is a little brass cap that I found in the electrical aisle. These are used on lamp tubing to close off an end. You can find them at a home improvement store. I picked one that's brass because brass solders, and we need to solder everything together here so that there'll be no gas or air leaks. Anyway, that's an overview of the parts. We'll have to start putting them together now. Although no holes have been drilled yet, I've just placed everything in a rough mock-up so you can see what'll have to be done. The torch valve leads into the short length of copper pipe. We're going to need to solder the copper pipe to the torch valve stem here. Then we'll use our pliers to tighten the compression fitting up really tightly here. We're going to need to solder our 1-inch copper nipple into our plumbing store fitting. Then we're going to need to solder our brass little cap onto the end of our copper pipe nipple. Then we're going to use the superfine drill bit to drill one tiny hole through the brass cap as a gas orifice. We'll drill with our 11/32 bit 4 holes spaced around the steel pipe. Then what'll happen is this copper pipe does very reluctantly slip into the steel pipe. I'll probably have to persuade it a tiny bit with the rubber hammer, but it will go in there very tightly. We'll also have to drill a hole through the steel pipe to let our air assist tube go and turn in there. So let's get started at doing some of these steps. Let's tighten up our compression fitting here with our wrench and big pliers. Get it nice and tight here. That should be tight. Now the next thing I'll need to do is solder right there the copper tube to the brass burner tube. I've cleaned the areas where I'm going to be soldering with fine sandpaper. So it's now time to put some of our soldering flux on here. And I'll grab a small fire brick as a soldering rest, and I'll be right back to solder that up. Let's make this first soldered connection. There, it took the solder. We'll let that cool down, and then we'll inspect it to make sure it's soldered all the way around. Here's a look at the soldered result. The solder took nicely all the way around. There'll be no leak from that joint. The next step is to drill our little brass cap with one of the fine drill bits so that we turn it into a gas orifice. So I've taken my drill, I've put the collet chuck into it, and I've put a number 65 drill bit from the micro drill bit set I showed into the collet chuck. Now I will drill my hole. Yeah. The brass is fairly thin, so the hole will drill quickly. Use very little pressure with such a tiny drill bit, or you will break the bit for sure. So here we have our orifice hole drilled in the center of our brass cap. This is now ready to solder together. For the next step, 2 soldered connections have to be made. I've showed the layout here. This copper nipple has to be soldered into that fitting, and then this brass cap, which does fit into the end like so, has to be soldered onto the end of the copper. This will form our gas orifice. So let's flux these parts and get them soldered together. I've got everything fluxed and I've got it held in a good upright position by a small vice grip, so I will solder this up at this point. Make sure the soldering is good all the way around and that there's a very even seal. The gas orifice assembly is now complete, and as you can see here, I've put it on a propane tank and I'm showing it burning like a candle, which shows that gas is passing through the valve, through the assembly, and through the tiny orifice hole that we carefully drilled. So let's continue on with the rest of the burner. The next thing we've got to do is make sure that our completed burner orifice assembly will fit into the rest of the burner, which will be made from this piece of 6.5 inch long, 1/2 inch steel pipe. Now this is nearly going in, so it's just going to take a little work with a round file to clean that up in there, and then I will have a nice tight fit that I'm looking for. So I'll file that a little bit and then pick up the video. If you have a lathe, you could simply bore that out a few thousandths, but a file will also get it fine. After a few minutes of filing, I can now get A to very tightly fit into B. I'll be able to press the two together onto each other for a tight fit. So the next thing I have to do is look at where it'll finish up in the pipe, because I need to mark that area, and I need to drill with the 11/32 bit 4 holes through the steel pipe at that point. So I'll drill the 4 holes and I'll pick up the video again. I've drilled the 4 holes and I've slid the 6.5 inch steel pipe onto the orifice assembly, and this is the new burner burning at low power. I haven't drilled in for the air assist yet. We will do that next. One more hole has to be drilled and then we're complete. Just ahead of the 4 holes that are drilled for letting air in, I'm going to have to drill a hole that'll pass my hobby store L-shaped piece of brass tubing. 5/32 drill bit matches up perfectly, so I'm going to drill just about 3/8 of an inch ahead of the center of the previous holes. I'll go and drill this and then I'll pick up the video again. I've drilled the 5/32 hole for the air assist brass tube. I've inserted the brass tube, and to make sure it stays aligned straight, I stuck a piece of steel wire up and taped it into position. That steel wire runs right up into the end of the L-shaped brass tube, holding it in place. I filed down to clean steel and cleaned the brass with a little Scotch-Brite and sandpaper, and I've applied flux. All I have to do is take the torch and solder the brass to the steel here. So I'll right now do that. That seems to have soldered up all right. We'll let it cool down and then clean the flux off, and then we can do the final step of inserting the orifice assembly into the body of the burner that we've just completed. All that's left to do is to simply take the two pieces and fit them together. I'll give that a tap with a rubber mallet, and burner will be ready. About 10 taps with the rubber mallet, and the two pieces slid very tightly and nicely together. This is what the finished assembly looks like mounted on a propane tank. Let's actually stick this thing into a furnace and give it a test, see if it works. One last part I made here that's helpful is took a little thin piece of aluminum, about 3/4 of an inch wide, and just wrapped it around the pipe such that I can slide it back and forth to regulate the amount of air that's admitted by my 4 holes here. I'll leave it about halfway along. Here's another look at this self-made burner. Right now it's running on propane, and the air assist is provided from my shop air tank. In this case I'm just using a ball valve that's been cracked open a hair to provide a little air assist down my rubber air hose that leads into the burner. This one will actually burn outside the furnace at a lower level of power. It is, of course, much better to use a regulator than a ball valve. On the stand I built for my coffee can mini Foundry furnace, I am using a regulator. On this Kleenex I have 3 pieces of mesh screening from the home improvement store. These are used in kitchen and bathroom faucet aerators. What you can do with one of these screens is take it and push it down the end of your burner tube. I pushed one down about that far into mine. It can help mix the air and gas and give you a stable burn at the tip of the torch, although these will only run full on if they're inside the furnace cavity. But the little screen is another idea that you can try when you're first setting up and experimenting with your newly made burner. Here I'm showing the completed do-it-yourself burner. It's got a propane tank attached. It's hooked up to its extra air, which is coming through the regulator that can be seen at the bottom left. And the burner's, of course, in one of my coffee can furnaces. So let's light this up and have one last look at it running. This thing off to the side here is just a lid swivel holder that I worked up and welded on just to make life a little easier. Let's try and light up. I'll crack the gas so that I hear a bit of hissing. Put a piece of burning toilet paper in there. There's our initial propane burn. Now I'll bring up the air boost gently. Start out slowly to, of course, let things heat up. Swivel the lid into place. And let it begin warming up. Increase the air and the propane slightly. We can easily melt aluminum, copper, and brass with this heat. To shut down is very simple. Just turn off the gas and back off the air to nothing. And it stopped. So look at the residual heat from just a short run.